Larson looking to the high side. This time by.
Perfect lap.
White flag in the air. One more time around from Miami. Jimmy Johnson has never won at Homestead Miami Speedway, but he's never been in a position where he's had to win for a championship. Down the backstretch he goes. A half a lap away from the championship. Jimmy Johnson through 3 and 4. Make room. Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt. There's another 7-time champ. Jimmy Johnson wins his 7th NASCAR Sprint Cup championship.
Welcome back, everybody. This is episode 5 of Dirty Air, your number one NASCAR podcast, all DFS gambling-related talk. I'm your host, as always, Ryan Baumel. Jason, say what's up.
Hey, what's up, guys?
And Brandon. Brandon, what's up?
Hey, nothing much. Hope everybody's doing well. Looking forward to week number 3.
So, as always, as you heard, Jason and Brandon are with me. Jason, DFS NASCAR on Twitter. Brandon is Brandon Cruz, DFS on Twitter. Jason, let's start with last week, the Daytona Road Race recap. Let's start with Chase Elliott. The fate of Chase Elliott, I guess, obviously worked. Knowing what you know about the race, what did we learn about playing Chase Elliott at road courses going forward?
I mean, he's obviously a contender to win every road course. I mean, it just all comes down to where he's starting at. I mean, just that pole sitter just didn't seem, without the position differential, the way that slate shaped up. I mean, it worked out exactly like we expected it to, where those playing the big position differential guys was the play. And hope Chase Elliott fumbles, and we got lucky and that happened. Just unfortunate some other chips didn't fall into place for me this week, but yeah, I think that call was the right move, and I think it's the right move in the future. We know these Dominator points just aren't worth it to chase on these road courses. So when you have a lot of position differential out there to grab, that was the obvious choice.
All right, Brandon, well, I'll start with an easy question for you regarding Chase Elliott. So as a casual fan, watching that save that he made, it's like an unbelievable wow moment. You know what you're watching. Was that the same reaction that you had, or is that just kind of something that we don't really see as much?
So the one where he was sideways in the grass in the infield?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was wheeling it, man. He was wheeling it. His gloves were going left and right. That was just a good racing move.
Nobody talking about Kurt Busch's save, though. If you can call that a save. No, ain't nobody talking about Kurt Busch's save, if you can call that a save.
So I guess that's the question I was going to ask, is that you hear about when these guys go through the grass. I guess the main issue that they're worried about is whether their splitter gets torn up or not. What determines that? Is it how much the car bounces off the grass? Is it luck? How does that, because it seems like that makes or breaks the rest of the race for them.
Yeah, it's really just how that splitter, like how the car kind of weight transfers whenever it hits the grass, or if it hits a part of the dirt where it's like a hill or kind of built up from the mud and everything. And I mean, I was more surprised seeing Kurt almost go through 3 times as much grass in that one little kind of miss of the corner than anybody else had the whole week, and he didn't have damage, whereas other people did. And quick note here, this is just from what I've heard from my sources. They are not a fan of the turf at Charlotte. I mean, you could agree or disagree with my sources or whatever, but I put on Twitter last time, or during the Speedway race at Daytona, when Herbst went through the grass, is that Charlotte really regretted putting that turf down, and I'm hearing that they don't plan on putting turf at any of the new racetracks. Like whenever they repave Atlanta, whenever they do the Auto Club remake.
What are they regretting about it?
That it's too expensive. It was way too expensive to undertake. Grass is way cheaper. It's more expensive to repaint it every time because it fades really easily. Then you have to repaint all the sponsor stuff. It's just like repainting the asphalt every time. It doesn't drain very well, and not just like in the race, it doesn't drain very well at the track. And they're saying that it might actually wear the track out more, having that standing water stain there on the front straightaway. But that's just what I'm hearing. So you can agree with me or disagree with me, but that's what I've heard from behind the scenes.
I mean, it's grass.
So,
you're not supposed to drive in it. So
yeah, just stay on the track or get rid of the splitter, man. Like, come on, NASCAR, you can do it.
So Brandon, how do you think the race was, just in terms of a fan perspective of watching the race? I know obviously you weren't the biggest fan of the Daytona 500. Was this better for you?
Well, it's a tale of two races, really. If you're like some people who don't watch the beginning and then tune in for the last 10 laps, you're like, wow, that was a awesome race by Christopher Bell and Logano. They were racing hard. Whereas if you sat there for the whole race, you were like, oh man, NASCAR kind of robbed Elliot of a race with their shenanigans with the rain caution and other calls like that throughout the weekend. I mean, it was entertaining. I certainly don't have anything to hate on. It happened just like I thought it would, to where a lot of these drivers would be making mistakes and not making turn one and creating havoc for everybody else.
Yeah, it was a very fun race to watch. I mean, it was. I feel bad for dogging on this race last year because it was a snooze fest and I expected more of the same. But it put on a pretty good show at the Clash and here, so maybe all these road courses aren't going to be that bad.
So Jason, we talked about Chase Elliott. So taking Chase Elliott out of the equation, name one thing, or I guess one thing about a driver that we learned from this past race that you kind of put in the back of your mind for when we go back to a road course.
I mean, obviously you're going to put in Christopher Bell. I mean, obviously how well he ran, how good all those Gibbs cars look. I mean, that's something you're going to want to pay attention to going forward. And don't play Matty D on a road course. No, I'm just joking.
Brandon, what's the one thing that you're taking out of that?
And I was talking to Jason about this before we started recording, but it was more of the tire issues from anything really, and I don't necessarily mean the locking up that the drivers had entering some of the corners, because if you're locking up the tires, it's normally a right front or a left rear, or a right front or a left front tire going down because you're flat spotting those tires. Whereas we really saw a lot of tire wear, and most of the flats came from the rear tires, and they said on the broadcast that where the tires are really wearing were on the inside of the tires, on the rear. That's where you saw De Benedetto blow his tire and completely destroy his car. Eric Jones had a flat tire on his left rear, and it almost destroyed him. He got extremely lucky not tearing that car up. So that's something that I really didn't even think of, but it was the lack of almost reliability that the Goodyear tires had on the rear tires, because those shouldn't be the ones blowing out if people are locking tires up and stuff. So just the tire wear and the amount of people who were having issues, having flats or the wear, like
I think Danger
fall
blew
off
rear tire as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did as well. I mean, a lot of these guys had rear tire issues, and that's more of the tire issue. That's not necessarily the drivers.
So if that's a tire issue and not a driver issue, if you're a driver of a car, do you want to know that these other guys are blowing their tires, or is there anything you can do to somewhat save it, or is it like you said, it's a tire issue and it's just hoping it's not your tire?
You got to hope it's not your tire, and the only thing that you can do, and we've seen NASCAR kind of hold throwing yellows and stuff to certainly help the field pit before. Like if somebody blows a tire and there's debris on the apron or the track or whatever, everybody knows that NASCAR is going to throw yellow, but you'll have the spotters and crew chiefs telling the drivers, hey, we got to pit now before the caution comes out. So that's really the only thing you can really take away from that.
Anybody have any final thoughts before we move on to this week from last week?
No. I think it was a fun race. Excited for the next road courses. Yeah, let's move on.
All right. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Tired of losing in fantasy sports? Times are changing. Now it's just you versus the numbers. Prize Picks is the perfect place for you, whether you are the biggest sports fan around or you're a seasoned vet in the daily fantasy space. On Prize Picks, you simply select 2 to 5 players and predict if they will go over or under their fantasy projection. Think Denny Hamlin is going to win the big race? Take his over and win real cash today. Prize Picks gives you the chance to win 10 times your money for getting 4 predictions correct. Entries are so simple, they can be made in less than 60 seconds. Sign up today at prizepicks.com or on the Prize Picks app and use code DIRTYAIR, that's DIRTYAIR, DIRTYAIR, to get a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. Prize Picks truly is daily fantasy simplified. So let's move on this week. Dixie Vodka 400, Homestead Miami Speedway, finally a mile and a half. It's an oval. It's a track where I think there's some more comparisons and some more data and some more just, I don't know. For me as a casual fan, the mile and a half tracks, the 2 mile tracks, those are the ones that I think are the most enjoyable. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But that's how I look at it. It's 267 laps, 80 laps in stage 1, 80 laps in stage 2, 107 in stage 3. The official starting lineup, I believe, will come out tomorrow, but it looks like right now that Denny Hamlin's on the pole with Joey Logano, Christopher Bell, and Kevin Harvick behind him. Jason, initial thoughts on this week?
Well, it's great to have the season finally feel like it's really kicking off. We're going to get into the stretch of some mile and a half. So, like you said, it's good to have some data to look at. We know Homestead. If you think of Homestead, you think of that high line. You think of a tire wear. It's fast track, high steep banking. When I like to look at other tracks to compare to ahead of this week, I start looking at data from Darlington. You can look at some of the other tire wear tracks like your Auto Club. And also some of the other steep bank tracks like even a Dover or Bristol, but mostly I'm looking at the Homestead Darlington. And what obviously sticks out right off the bat when you see Denny Hamlin on the pole, he started on the pole here last year, dominated a bunch of points, won the race. So it's clear he's going to be a pretty big favorite for a lot of people probably in the DFS world going into this week.
Brandon, are you taking a similar approach to looking at some stats on some track comparisons and stuff, or is there a different way you're going about trying to find your lineups?
This week I'm actually going a different direction. I think a lot of people are going to go the way that Jason did and now either really succeed or fail by this, but I'm really going to be looking at lap data of how people performed at Texas, the fall Texas race, or Texas 2, Kansas 2, and Las Vegas 2, maybe Darlington 3 from last year. And the reason I'm doing that is because I think a lot of the Homestead data is kind of overshadowed by the fact that was the championship race. Then last year, it started as a day race and it was delayed by rain, and so it became a night race. And so a lot of drivers, and they didn't have practice. This was one of the first races we came back from COVID. Obviously, they had Darlington a few weeks before, but this is one of the first races when they came back. I think it was ran in June of last year. And so it was a different temperature. It was when the teams were still, figuring out what they're going to do without practice and everything. So the reason I'm looking towards Texas, Kansas, Las Vegas of last year is because that's when everybody was in the groove. That's when everybody knew what they were arriving with and everything like that. And so I almost want to look at the progressive banking that Homestead has and really compare it to Las Vegas and Kansas versus Darlington and Auto Club. And the reason I'm doing that is because it's going to race a lot similar to those tracks versus Darlington and Auto Club. Like Darlington, you're on the brakes a lot. You're letting the car settle down in the corners. That's more of a one groove racetrack. And you could say the same thing for Texas, but I just feel that this race is going to race more similar to Vegas, Kansas, and Texas at the end of last year versus how it raced at the start of last year.
Jason, what are your thoughts on that kind of an approach?
I think it's a great approach. I definitely am curious to see how that works out. It definitely makes a ton of sense. To see where they were at in that form towards the end of the season, as like you said, as they've gotten used to the practice. It's not an approach that I thought. I definitely interested to see how it works out. I definitely like it. So we might be on some different guys here going through this.
I'm hoping, man, because that we'll talk about it as we get through. But I am not liking the Reddick chalk, and we'll talk to that as we get there.
I'm looking at different data, and I think the same.
So, all right. So before we get into the actual nuts and bolts of this and the guys that we're looking at, Jason, how are you looking to build a lineup? How many dominators are you looking at? How are you trying to construct this? Guys up front, guys in the middle, guys starting in the back. I know road course and super speedway, we talked a lot about place differential. But we get to the mile and a half, a lot more laps to be led, a lot more fast laps, a lot more chances to get some points.
Yeah, there's definitely, like last week, we know we didn't really talk about Dominator points, but this week it is a big, you definitely want to talk about some Dominator points, and it's definitely something you're going to want to build around. If we look at the last two Homestead races, if we just look at drivers who scored over 20 Dominator points, we had three, I think it was 3 2 years ago and 4 last year. So 4 guys last year scored over 20 points, Dominator points. So there's going to be at least a few opportunities here to pick up a good chunk of Dominator points. I like the idea of playing 2. And with this many that we can likely see, I think it's important to realize that we might want to pivot off some of this chalk because we can take a chance at some of these other guys who have that potential to score those 30 points. So,
Brandon, similar lineup construction way for you?
Yeah, I'm looking at probably 2 lap leaders. I'm going to really focus on trying to hit guys who hit fast laps versus laps led. We only have 66.75 laps led points and 120.15 fast lap points. And the reason I'm going to do that is because this race is really going to be, or at least with fast laps, it's really going to be determined on tire wear and who pits first. Like the first person to hit pit road, and it's usually not the leader, but usually whoever hits pit road first is going to ring off those fast laps because we see anywhere from 3 to 4 seconds of fall off in a run here. And we saw last year when people blew tires, like I think it was Eric Jones last year, he blew a tire little bit halfway into a run. He went a lap down because he was on new tires. He was running almost 2.5 seconds faster than anybody else on the track. So he actually racked up 20 fast laps. So just doing that, if that happens in this race, that's just 9 points racked up just because he pitted first. And so I'm just going to try and focus on guys that I think are going to be fast or guys that I think are really going to be aggressive on pit strategy.
So, all right, let's get into this a little bit with the actual guys in the race. So you're looking at the beginning of the field, Brandon. You've got Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano up front. If you're playing Denny Hamlin, are you looking to play another Dominator from up there, or are you trying to create a game script where if somebody's leading, it's at a different point of the race?
I don't have my data pulled up here. I was going to answer stuff. Let me look. Okay, so last year, if you look at Hamlin's race last year, I believe he started in the pole last year as well at the Homestead race here. So if you're looking at him, you're going to be like, okay, he's going to lead laps right off the bat, and we might run into a situation to where he's third place on lap 3. So he starts on the pole. He doesn't even lead laps up until lap 76, and that's 6 laps before the end of the stage. He comes out of that and he starts second, and he doesn't take the lead over again until lap 123. So if you're going into this race expecting the pole sitter, especially Hamlin in this situation, to kind of lead laps, you have to be aware of that fact that, hey, he might not show up with the fastest car. And that's something I mean, we really saw last year and that I talked about during the preseason of quote unquote like pole sitters or people projected to dominate races kind of busting. And I just mean that in the sense of they're not leading right off the bat. And Homestead just seems like the type of race that people who start up front, maybe Hamlin, Logano, even if they're fast, towards the end of the race, we might see somebody almost like Truex, Keselowski, Elliot starting, right now we see him starting somewhere around 11th, even Harvick starting 4th. I'd much rather kind of aim for those guys to lead and just hope that, Hamlin and Logano don't show up that quick or that fast in the race.
Yeah, and I like that point you made because that's something that I've kind of gone into this year. I told myself is to not fall into that pole sitter trap because you do see that bump every week where the pole sitter is going to get a bump. And like you said, if you looked at last year, I think it was only 4 times all year where the pole sitter had the most Dominator points. And one of them was Chase Elliott at the season finale. He started from the back. He didn't really start from the pole. And obviously one time was Hamlin here at Homestead. So those, like you said, when they show up without practice and without qualifying before, when the car sat on the pole, they were the fastest car. They were set up and they had practice under their belt. But now it's a random. So you don't know, like you said, who's going to show up with that strong car and hit the setup off the bat. So I definitely like taking the shot in like when you're chasing Dominators this week to consider, the crowd's going to fall on your Hamlins. They're going to fall on your Martin Truex, they're going to fall on your Kevin Harvick. I mean, that's where the field's going to fall. We know all 3 of those guys aren't going to hit the 30 Dominator point mark. I mean, they can, we know they can hit it, but the odds of all 3 of them doing it. So take a chance on when you're building your 2 lineups, go with one of the chalk guys, a Hamlin, then throw in one of these guys like a Logano, like you mentioned, or a Keselowski, who's going to be much lower owned. And when they do hit, you're not only are you having to put on a big score, but you also know that the higher owned guys are obviously being limited on the amount of points they're scoring because now you're 8% on guys scoring. So I think that's one of the efforts I've been looking to make this season after looking at a lot of the data from last year.
Yeah, it's almost, I'm not saying it's similar to the road courses because it's not. At a road course, you're cautious of playing the pole sitter because you need him to lead a lot of laps. Whereas I'm cautious to play the pole sitter without practice right now because it's not that he needs to lead a lot of laps, but you would normally project the pole sitter to lead a lot of laps, back in the day this is a whole different ball game. So that's yet again going back. I'm going to be looking at who was fast towards the end of last year because I imagine if they had speed towards the end of last year, especially in the chase, they're going to carry it right off the bat here. That's just another reason why I'm not really focusing on last year's Homestead race a ton.
And obviously there are going to be points this year where the pole sitter does kind of matter. Like a flat track, the pole sitter has a likelihood of getting out and leading some laps early. It's a different scenario. But I think on these mile and a halves, I think fade the chalk pole sitters all year, and you'll probably do pretty well.
Yeah, and then
especially in GPP. I mean, single entry, I get it, but or cash, I get it, but that's no fun. GPP, I think you can fade them.
Yeah. So real quick, going back to Ryan's question, I'll probably change that, and I'll probably look to try and have 3 projected lap leaders in a lineup.
So
probably one of those you'd probably be looking to hopefully snag somebody around like that 8-9K range, low 9K that you think could go under owned, right?
Yeah, just like people who weren't really talked about, I talked about Keselowski and Logano both, but they scored very well at the road course, and they were in the teens and the low 10% ownership range, and I think we're going to see very similar plays to that have similar upside to Logano.
Yeah, and Abel, he's probably somebody he's probably going to be priced around 8K, low 8s, who, he showed his car last week. He's going to be in a Gibbs car, starting third. Nobody's going to like that. He's going to be low owned. He can definitely put up some fast laps, put up a top 5. You never know the way his races go.
So we mentioned Denny Hamlin as being chalk, especially sitting on the pole. So we go through the other guys,
right? I'm assuming,
right? I would agree. I think
12K.
I think at these, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think at these kind of tracks, a guy like Denny Hamlin or Kevin Harvick, if they're ever on the pole, they're going to be chalk because guys just assume that they're at their bread and butter at these kind of tracks.
Plus he dominated here last year, started from the pole. Everybody's going to look at that. That's what everybody looks at. How did he do here last? He won. Start Denny Hamlin.
So who else in that top 10 or the projected top 10 of the lineups that we have right now are we looking at being able to, look at as chalk? Guys like Logano or Bell. I assume Harvick is the second chalk in that top 5. Anybody else in that top 10, Brandon, that you think is chalk between either Kurt Busch or McDowell, Keselowski, Ryan Preece, Truex, or Cole Custer?
Pricing's really going to dictate that. I would assume Harvick because I'm probably going to be on Harvick. Obviously, entering the week, as I just said, looking back at last year's race, and even though I'm looking at Texas, Harvick had the best car at Texas till it was raining and NASCAR didn't throw a yellow.
Just I'm looking at Darlington, I see Harvick as a first, third, and first at Darlington.
Yeah,
it's the same results.
yeah. So Harvick should be the favorite going in. So I'll be very interested to see how high Logano is hyped up, because there's a good chance that I don't play or that I'm very light on Logano, and I'm focusing more on Harvick, Truex, even people like William Byron, or even Kyle Busch starting around 18th or 24th, 22nd, somewhere, however the lineups end up going, because Kyle has had, a season of last year of practice, and he should arrive to this track. I know he didn't have a whole lot of success last year with Adam Stevens, but he's got a new crew chief, and he hasn't had a lot of success with him in the Xfinity Series. But I think Kyle is going to be better this year. And you can look at Elliot. Elliot was really fast at the end of last year at, if you want to look at Darlington as well, if you look at the other races, Las Vegas, he was doing very well in, and even Bellainey to an extent. So I would much rather almost focus on Harvick, Elliot, Bellainey, and Truex versus harping on Logano and Hamlin, or hopping on those guys.
Yeah, so Jason, that's what I was going to kind of ask you. So that next range of guys, I think there's a lot of good drivers and some good equipment. I think a lot of people are going to look here because there's guys that might have the potential to lead some laps depending on where the race is, and the fact that there's just some built-in place differential of a guy starting 15th to 10th as opposed to in the top 10. You've got guys like Chase Elliott, Chris Buescher, Alex Bowman, Ryan Blaney, Ricky Stenhouse, Almirola, all in good rides. Kyle Larson's even right there with Eric Jones. Which of these guys, are you looking at? Obviously, we know pricing is going to determine some of that, but just in terms of the ability at these kind of tracks.
Yeah, price. I know Brian already touched on Chase Elliott. I do like Chase Elliott here. It just depends on where he gets priced at and who he's priced around. But I can't see him being too popular if he's priced around like these Hamlins and Harvicks and Truexes. But you never know. He is starting 11th and he's Chase Elliott. Blaney is another guy I'm looking at there, starting 14th. He ran very well at the style tracks. Last year he finished third at Homestead. He does put up some Dominator points. I don't have the number here for me. He 31 Dominator points here last year. Ran well at the Homestead the year before. He hasn't ran well at Darlington though, so that kind of concerns me looking at it. But Bellainey is one. He's like I said, he started the year pretty good last year. So on these mile and a half, he put up some Dominator points, but he definitely struggled towards the end of the season. So he's a guy I'm looking at. You got Jones here. I have no interest in Jones starting 18th probably. When Kyle Larson's obviously a guy everybody's going to be on. The Kyle Larson hype has started, which for good reason. He's pretty good here at Homestead.
So, Brandon, when we look at that next range, I think the final range we look at the guys at the back, there's going to be some chalk there, and we'll talk about them. But there might be some guys in this next range, in this starting area, that I think you can get some decent ownership on. Obviously, we've talked pricing is going to matter. Kyle Busch is probably going to get a lot of looks here starting 24th, name recognition, looking like he's, back to at least being much more competent than he was in 2020. But some other guys in this range, you've got guys like Anthony Alfredo, Chase Briscoe, Ross Chastain. I think William Byron, depending on his pricing, could go overlooked because I think a lot of guys at that point would rather just go back and play like a Reddick or a DiBenedetto at the back of the field. Any interest of these guys for you, Brendan? Or if you're going this far back, are you going all the way back to the field?
No, this is certainly a race that I'm going to focus on quote-unquote good drivers. I like Byron a lot. Larson, I think, will actually be in a similar price range to people like Briscoe and Byron. And I mean, Larson, I know these are his 7 races here since 2013. 15th, 13th, 5th, 2nd, 3rd, 13th, 40th, with 325 laps led through that, but an average finish of 13. I mean, the guy is, for all the talk of how well Larson is running the high line on tracks, I mean, he hasn't won here. Okay, he's leading a lot of laps. I get that, but that's with practice. That's with him, starting 7th in a race where he led 141. I don't see Larson leading laps in this race. He'll finish in the top 10 for sure, but I think the expectation that, this is Larson's track, this is where we need to play Larson, I think that is way overblown. So I just want to put that out there. Talking about Alfredo's interesting. I'm not sure how much people are going to want to play Anthony Alfredo here. This is actually his favorite track, and this is the one that he enjoys racing at the most in his limited time, running the NASCAR series. But he said multiple times that this is his favorite track. This is the one he feels most comfortable at. I would actually kind of bump him up in this situation. This is about the only track that I would really have expectations to see him maybe run inside the top 20, with no real data from him in this car. This is about the only track I'm interested in playing Anthony Alfredo.
Yeah, he's that guy who's definitely you saw last year in the Xfinity Series. He was very comfortable running that high line here. He had a good finish. He ran 4th and ran 11th here. He's a guy I'm eyeing on. The thing that worries me about Alfredo, though, is that I have a feeling he could be priced around. He can be priced in that range to where he's the only option for people. If he's because we don't have Ty Dillon's on the slate.
You stole my question. That's what I was going to say.
Where is he going
to the Ty Dillon?
I hope they price him up to 72, 74 in a different range. If they price him 6K, 62, somewhere similar where they did last week, then he's going to be the only option for everybody to go to. But he's still a good play.
Yeah, and it'll. Sorry, Ryan.
Well, no, I was just gonna say before you go, Brian. I was just gonna say. I mean, you stole my question. That was gonna be the question: is where do you think he's priced? Is he priced in that 6K range somewhere where it's where Ty Dillon was last week, where it's he's just by default the best play, or do you think do we have any faith in DraftKings to price him up, even I don't know, even just some. I don't even think he's going to be above 7K, but near 7K, I think makes a difference. I think there's a big difference between 6K and 6.8 or 6.9, something like that. I mean, do you have any faith that that's where he's priced, or are you pretty comfortable? You think he's going to be down in that 6K range?
I think he'll be around the low 6s. I mean, I don't mind playing him at all, unless I just see that everybody like Ty Dillon last week. I didn't like Ty Dillon when you were making a lot of lineups. Optimizers, and you would kind of just end up on Ty Dillon. And so that's the main reason why I pivoted to Suarez. I don't know if we're going to have that same situation with Alfredo. It's kind of different if everybody likes Alfredo, because I don't think they will. It'll be different if everybody kind of just lands on him in lineup construction. I want to make a quick note on Larson, Reddick, and Alfredo. Alfredo runs the outside lane at this track, and he never touches the wall. You don't see Alfredo scraping against the wall. You don't see him beating the right side down.
Larson and Reddick, however.
Yeah, I mean, Larson and Reddick, I mean, Reddick was very, very lucky he didn't get a flat tire last year because he did get in the wall. We've seen Larson at races. I mean, the main reason why he hasn't won at Homestead is because he can't stay off the wall. He's inches. He's 110% every single lap. Whereas Alfredo, yeah, sure, he might be in a lesser car, but I would trust Alfredo to not damage the car. Whereas you got to really worry about that with that. You got to worry about that with Larson, and you got to worry about that with Reddick.
Yeah, that was one of the points I was going to make about the Reddick chalk. Is the same thing you said. Is he drives it so close to the edge, and you know it's just that risk is there for him to get it in the wall, and it seems like a good spot. So even though he's starting 35th, and you think, oh, it's a low floor, it's a high floor, but I mean, still, if the guy finishes 32nd, it doesn't matter. You're still not going to score very well with that lineup.
Yeah, or I mean, look back.
This isn't going to be a high attrition rate. You're not going to have a lot of negative points on this slate.
Oh yeah, and you could say the same thing of what happened at Homestead last year, early in the year, when he was really aggressive at Homestead, ran the high side in 3 and 4, and passed a lot of people. And what happened? He got in the wall. So I could very easily see. I would almost, if you compare the danger of him getting in the wall versus everybody freaking out about Eric Jones possibly wrecking last week. I mean, I think there's a much higher risk of Reddick busting.
Especially because last week Jones was on a road course. As long as the trouble happens early on a road course, you can rebound. I mean, you saw Matty D with the whole side of his car gone. He was still competitive through that race. So that's a big difference between taking a swing on some of these high variance guys on an oval where you could be three laps down in a hurry.
Yeah, if I have to assume where prices are at, I would much rather play people like Cole Custer, even Stenhouse, Eric Almirola, people like that, and probably in a similar price range versus trying to get to Reddick or Newman, because Newman is horrible. We need to just really put that in our mind as DFS players. I mean, Newman is not the guaranteed 16th, 17th place finish he was. I mean, he's old, man. He's old. He's got CTEs he's got bad habits, I mean, Newman's trash. We really need to push the Newman.
He's got a couple good runs left in him, right? I mean, it may not be this week, but he's going to get a couple top 10s this year, right?
No, he was only optimal last. He was optimal one time last year.
No, I said a couple top 10s. I didn't say optimal. I said a couple top 10s, like finishes. He'll get a couple top.
That train left years ago.
No top 10?
No top 10s.
He got a top 10 last year. I'm looking at one. No, that was 2 years ago at Homestead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was about
wrong
to say, I was like, I'm pretty sure he doesn't. Let me look right fast. I know we're getting on a tangent here. 2020. Let's see.
No top 10s.
Two top 10s last year. Where are these top 10s at?
No.
He finished 9th at Daytona when he almost died, and then he finished 6th at Talladega.
You gotta give him 2 for the Daytona, right? Then if he almost died, that's 2.
Yeah,
one
okay,
at Talladega, so 3 top 10s.
No, 2. He finished 9th upside down, and then he finished 6th at Daytona in the fall. If you look at races that actually matter, 15th at Darlington. That's when he was optimal because he started 31st. Everywhere else, okay, yeah. 13th at Michigan. We'll give him that. 13th at Texas early in the year.
Rocket Man.
I mean, but we shouldn't be seeing these 30s, 20s, low 20. I mean, this is horrible. He's horrible. Get him out of here. Stop playing Newman, everyone.
So, Jason, you mentioned Reddick and DiBenedetto at the back of the field. Is there any chance they get priced up high enough that they're not chalk? And then do you have any interest in them if that becomes the case?
I don't think there's any chance they get priced up high enough where they're not chalk. To be honest, it just depends on what other value falls in the slate. I have a feeling you're probably going to have to choose between Reddick and DiBenedetto is how I would think a lot of lineup constructions are going to go without knowing what they're going to price. But they're probably going to price similar, and you're probably going to be able to play them both. And I think everybody's going to go Reddick. I mean, I just have to see. It looks like DiBenedetto could be a pivot down there. But he's still going to be popular as well. Like you said, if you're playing GPP, you're probably just going to try to go with some of these other guys up towards... I don't know. It's kind of hard to go against DiBenedetto, though, if he's going to be low-owned. We'll just have to see, like you said, how pricing comes out. If they make you choose between Reddick and DiBenedetto, though, I think everybody's going to go Reddick.
And if I'm choosing place differential between Briscoe, Byron, Reddick, and DiBenedetto, I might just not even touch Reddick and DiBenedetto and focus and go really overweight on Briscoe and Byron.
Yeah. Briscoe's, it's definitely another guy that stands out. A guy that can run the high line as well. Yeah, he's got a win here in the Xfinity Series, 2 top 5s. And plus Stuart Haas, the equipment's very good.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Is there any game to the theory, Brandon, so this is like a normal DFS theory, is that guys can be chalky, but they may not necessarily be chalky if you play them together. So depending on the prices that we talked about, DiBenedetto and Reddick could both be chalky, but there's a chance that playing them together is not chalky because it's a unique lineup construction. Is there any interest in doing something like that, or is that a decent strategy just not here?
I don't know if I could really answer that. I don't have any data to really support one way or the other. If whenever I play, I just came up with the example that if Reddick and DiBenedetto are going to be chalky, I would much rather play Briscoe and Byron, and that would probably mean that I would play those two guys together. It depends on pricing. Depending on who I'm playing, and if I want, if I'm playing cash, which I don't play cash because I think it's a waste of time, and I think I think the risk is way. I don't like cash.
Dumb. It's dumb. I'm sorry.
Dumb.
I tried it last year. It's dumb. You're playing a high variance sport, and you're only getting double your money back if shit don't go wrong for you.
Yeah.
That's why you guys don't see a cash core in my stuff anymore, because I tried it. It's just no fun to even make content for, because you're picking the same guys everybody else has to pick too.
Yeah,
it's just boring.
Like if I was going to play cash, no matter who my lap leaders were, I'm putting DiBenedetto and Reddick together in every lineup, or I'm putting Briscoe and DiBenedetto, or Byron and Reddick, or Byron and DiBenedetto. It's going to be those four, Mitch paired together in every cash, and GPPs you can afford to get different in. So that's a long-winded answer to I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question, Ryan.
I do. My opinion on that though would be like if you got two chalky guys. Let's say if they both came in at 40%. Like if you're playing two 40% guys together that are chalky, because they both hit. But you have no leverage if one fucks up. Then you screwed up your lineup that was hedged. You have no leverage against each other. So I don't know. I don't like the idea. I don't have no data though. Maybe it could work out sometimes.
No, you're right. It's a true GPP kind of a thing, because it's like, these guys are chalky, but I'm trying to find a way to make them not chalky. So there's a chance that it, ruins the entire lineup. But if for some reason it does hit, if you are in a big contest and you've got a 5%, variance with those two guys together, that's just, it's a true GPP play. But it could absolutely bite you in the face. But anything in NASCAR, a blown tire can bite you in the face. That's how I look at it here.
Yeah, and if you want to, I look at plays in the back as who can get more raw points, who can finish better. And so Briscoe right now, we see him starting around 30th. We see Byron starting around 31st, whereas Reddick is 35th, DiBenedetto is 37th. So you're telling me that Reddick and DiBenedetto should be higher owned than Briscoe and Byron? You're telling me that they have a higher possibility of outscoring Byron and Briscoe, whereas, and I'll ask you when I'm done with this, Jason, of where you would rank these guys. But if I had to rank these drivers in the back, I would probably put Byron, and this is in terms of who the play is. This is who would finish higher, flat out. I would probably rank these drivers: Byron, Briscoe, Reddick, DiBenedetto. How would you rank these four?
I would probably go Reddick, Byron, Briscoe, DiBenedetto.
Okay, so right here, we're agreeing that DiBenedetto has the worst upside between. So that right there should answer my internal battle of, should I play DiBenedetto? No, I'm gonna go with Briscoe, man. I already know I'm gonna be overweight on Briscoe.
So Brandon, before we get into a couple final thoughts on here, so a question that I had thought of that last week, and then we were talking about it this week with Chase Briscoe, Anthony Alfredo. Is there any big difference between driving an Xfinity Series car and driving a Cup Series car? Is it just the level of talent? Is there any huge? I know you see other sports guys say there's a huge rookie learning curve, or is it just if guys are good enough, guys are good enough?
Talent will always outshine people with no talent, but comparing the Xfinity Series to the Cup Series that's comparing apples to grapefruits. The cars we're running right now with the Gen 6 or this current package, it's basically just it's almost the same style of IndyCar racing to where you have so much aero push and aerodynamics coming into play, whereas Xfinity is more mechanical grip and you can actually, use the throttle. Whereas at most tracks, I mean, Homestead's a great example. A lot of the Cup guys are going to be full throttle. Obviously, they're going to be letting off to not destroy the tires and to not, get in the wall, but they're going to be close to flat out most of this track. Whereas the Xfinity Series, you really have to actually lift because you don't have that downforce with the spoiler. You don't have the downforce that the Cup Series have. So really comparing Xfinity to Cup Series is really overrated, and it's even more overrated when you really look at the nature of those two series, whereas the Xfinity Series doesn't have really any level of competition. There's maybe 8 teams that are actually, that could compete for a win, or maybe compete for a win might actually narrow it down to like 6, and then 8 could compete for a top 10, then everybody else is kind of just finishing wherever they finish.
So Jason, the first question I have for you this week in terms of chalk, who do you expect to be chalk and good chalk? So what kind of chalk, and obviously keep saying this, the pricing is going to matter, but from starting positions, from what you're looking at, who do you think is going to be chalky, or are you just kind of going pretty different this week?
I always think good chalk's going to be Kevin Harvick. Like I say, he's a stud. How can you not go against Kevin Harvick? In most weeks, this week especially, he performs very well on the steep bank tracks. As for 4, he does have, is it 2 wins or 1 win here at Homestead? I think it's 1, right? Kevin Harvick. He's got a win here. Obviously dominates a lot on Darlington as well. So he's definitely good chalk. Bad chalk, I think we already touched on, is I don't like playing Hamlin this week. Everybody's going to be on him. We know how the pole sitters bust. If we look down a little further in this field, it's hard to really tell without salary, of where that chalk's going to lie. But yeah, I think this Reddick to Benedetto chalk down there, I mean, we kind of already touched on that we think that's bad chalk. Kyle Busch is interesting to see where he lands at. He could end up being good chalk. If I think he's gonna be priced around some of these dominators, so he probably will go low on. So he's a guy to key in on. Yeah, like I said, it's just hard to tell without pricing and start making lineups on where everybody's gonna fall at.
Mm-hmm. I'm interested to see what people say about Elliot, because Harvick and Elliot are probably my favorite guys entering this week. And I mean, we haven't talked about Elliot right now. I know we're recording this on Tuesday. It'll obviously depend on pricing, but if we didn't, come out of the gate right now talking about Elliot, I don't know if he's going to necessarily be chalk. Whereas if he's chalk, I think Elliot's great chalk. And if he's not talked about or if he's not played, I mean, I'm going to be playing a lot. I will be playing a lot of Elliot this week, regardless.
And so, Brendan, another guy that we didn't mention as much about, tends to be pretty fast at 1.5 tracks, Ryan Bellainey. What are your thoughts on him for this week?
Yeah, I like Bellainey a lot. If you look back at how he did last year at Homestead, I know I don't want to harp on that too much because I think he'll be different. But this was one of the races where he was projected to do well, and he actually did do well. He was running pretty much second place the entire race. It was him and Chase Elliott battling for second and third. When you look at the struggles that Bellainey had later in the season, that is one thing that kind of concerns me because he wasn't the fastest driver. As I just said, as I said earlier, I'm looking at the later races in the season. But this is a track that should suit Ryan Bellainey a lot. He likes the progressive banking, intermediate tracks, 1.5 miles. This is probably the first real test to see where Bellainey is this year. And if Bellainey sucks at this track this year, he's going to suck everywhere else. I mean, this is going to tell all we need to know about Bellainey this year.
Jason, anybody we didn't mention that you think we need to mention?
One guy who I'm kind of looking at here that's in that we didn't touch on when I went to that 10 through 20 range, a guy who's is Bubba Wallace. I know he's going to be a guy who's probably going to be priced in that low 6 range, probably going this week with where he's starting at. So he's going to be a guy that I think you might be able to look for value. He finished 13th here last year. He has a decent run around 16th in Darlington last year. Much better equipment. We saw the way this car looks good. It looked good at Daytona. I thought the equipment looked good last week. I think he could run top 12, run top 10, and get pretty solid value out there in that starting 19th, depending on where he's priced at. And I don't think nobody else is going to play him either.
Bubba is. I have no idea what to think. He was great at. I mean, he's in a JGR car. He's in the fifth JGR car. At Daytona, he was fast because he was expected to win that race. And I know I say that, and you're like, oh, well, that you're just making fun of Jordan wanting wins. I was like, no, I'm telling you, Jordan expected him to win that race. He expected himself to win that race. That's why he was racing that aggressively. I was joking with my friends at the road course. I think Bubba was. They showed him on TV and he was running. He was running like 16th or something. I made the joke. I was like, oh, Jordan's firing him. Jordan is going to fire Bubba. He's running 16th. And we just talked about how Larson and Reddick, people who should be fast this week, have a high chance of getting on the wall. The way to be fast this track is to run the wall. Wallace, and I mentioned this at Daytona, and I almost feel bad for him with the pressure that he has, but Bubba has the expectation to perform. To perform here, you have to run on the outside. And he hasn't necessarily been that well at this track in whatever car he's been in. Whether it was Richard Petty, I mean, last year he was the last car in the lead lap, and a stage saved him from going a lap down. But he was off the pace there. We've never really seen him be that competitive in the Xfinity Series here. And so this is a race that I'm hesitant to be on Wallace because I see him being somebody who's going to push it too far and get in the wall.
Yeah, but I think with Bubba, I mean, he's going to be very low owned. So I mean, it's kind of more of a, it's at least it's not, I mean, it's going to give you some leverage against the field because I mean, he's in a Gibbs car. I mean, we've seen the way Gibbs has performed in all the series so far this season. At all the tracks, they've looked very good. And I think he's going to be priced in a range where he's not going to have to do much more than probably like a top 13, top 14 finish to hit that value.
So, Brandon, the final question I have for you, you brought up Bubba. Does Bubba Wallace win a race this year?
I mean, my heart says yeah, but I don't think so. I think I mean, I hate, and I'm not harping on Bubba. I like Bubba, man. He's one of the only drivers that I actually root for. And we were, I know Jason brought up that he and his family met Ross Chastain, and you're a big fan of Chastain. I mean, I've been a fan of Wallace ever since his K&N days. I've been watching him since the beginning because I've liked his attitude. I liked how he is. I met him a couple times back when he was running Xfinity for Roush way back when, and he was super nice when the attention wasn't on him, when the spotlight wasn't on him, and he's always had a lot of expectations for him. Going back to the Jordan thing, I think if Jordan is dead serious on wanting 2 wins this year and is dead serious on seeing Wallace really succeed, I think that's going to hurt Wallace, and I think that pressure is going to hurt him. And I fear that if you look back at how Bubba's been in the past, he's wanted to quit racing before. Times when even before K&N, when he was at his local tracks and when he'd show up and run 16th or 17th, I mean, he wanted to quit. He was being honest with his family. He's not having fun. He wants to be in a car that can win, and I mean, this is it for him. And I think if he doesn't win this year, and if he doesn't get like 2 or 3 top 5s, we're not going to see Wallace in the NASCAR series for very much longer. Maybe, I mean, we might not see him anywhere past 2023.
Well, so that was going to be my next question for you, Jason. If he doesn't win a race this year, is he in the same car next year?
Yeah.
How long does Jordan give him, do you think?
I mean, as long as he keeps bringing those sponsors in, I mean, this seems to be what it is nowadays. I mean, if you're a driver that can bring the money to the table, I mean, look at the sponsors he's grabbing. I mean, big names he's bringing to the sport. As long as that keeps up, he'll have a ride for a long time.
Do you think they're going to stay if he's running in the back?
I mean, if he keeps getting camera time, if the car keeps getting showed, I mean, he's going to have to. I mean, if he's running like back marker 25th, but I mean, if he even puts up a season like he did last year, I mean, he got this ride with the season he had last year.
We have a real issue here and he is way more talented than Danica. We have a real situation here that is very similar to Patrick's attention and ownership. I mean, she had a shitload of money coming her way for 6-7 years, and then GoDaddy left, Nature's Bakery had an issue where they kind of left, and so that could be very similar to DoorDash.
I mean, it's still 6 or 7 years run isn't a bad run if you're Bubba. I mean, if you get 6 or 7 years in the Cup Series, you're pretty happy.
I'm talking about Danica's like 7 years with GoDaddy as a sponsor. When she was in ARCA, when she was in Nationwide, when she was in the Cup Series. I mean, GoDaddy wasn't with her those 7 years in the Cup Series. Wallace is, I can't think off the top of my head, on year 5 or 6. Being in Xfinity Cup Series area, almost longer if you look at ARCA or K&N. So we're at that point to where I think everybody agrees that we need to see, results, man.
He definitely has to. Yeah, he has to do some results. So I don't think he needs to win, though. I mean, do you think he's got to win to keep his ride? Like, I mean, top 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jordan said that. He said he ain't keeping him if he doesn't win.
All right, well, we'll see. But like I said, the biggest thing about the Wallace play is good equipment, right? Yeah, Eric Jones. What's the difference between? I think we've had this conversation before. The difference between Jones and Wallace as a driver, and I think we both like Jones a little bit more as a driver than Bubba. But I mean, Jones finished 7th, 3rd, 8th, 5th, 4th. If you look at the last 2 Homestead, last 3 Darlington races, so I mean that car is definitely going to have the potential to run top 10. So if Bubba can just keep it off the wall and keep it clean, I think I don't mind it as a low on play.
What do you think Wallace's best finish is this year?
His best finish this year?
Yeah, his best finish. Like anywhere, like whatever track. What is his best finish this year?
4th.
Yeah, I can see him getting a top 5.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think he gets 5th. I think 5th or 4th.
I think he can get like 7 to 8 top 10s maybe.
And you know what that is? That's fired. That's bye-bye. You're fired.
What if he gets a check? Who's they going to put in there? Ty Gibbs?
They're going to be a 4-car team with the next car. Wallace, I mean, Denny and Jordan bought a facility for 4 cars.
A 4-car team
They bought a facility for 4 cars. They've already hinted that they're going to expand to 2 cars next year.
So the Toyota field is going to double?
There's good rumors that Richard Petty might go to Toyota or might merge with this team, or that we're going to see more cars out of the stable. I mean, Wallace, he is on the hot seat. I'm trying to stress that to people, man.
Well, if they got 4 cars, they got plenty of rides.
Yeah, not for him. they won't winners.
Let's hope he does good. Let's root for the guy.
I hope so, man, but I'm just so cynical.
I know.
So one other thing I wanted to talk about, completely unrelated to this race. So I saw this last week in an interview. I don't know if you guys saw the interview that Kyle Busch did with Graham Bensinger, and he finally opened up a little bit about Adam Stevens and how that thing kind of ended. I don't know if you saw that, but basically he said that he feels that Adam Stevens quit on him because he went to Adam Stevens, asked for a couple personnel changes. Adam Stevens basically wasn't in cahoots with that, didn't like it, came back to him and just kind of said, Kyle, I think it's time we kind of do our own things and kind of move on. Was there anything behind the scenes that people had heard about that last year? Was there any rumors about that? Or is that, because that's kind of interesting. I think it's these guys that, they won 2 championships together. And I think obviously anytime you work with a guy like Kyle Busch, there's always going to be ups and downs. But I think that's kind of, an interesting end to that relationship, Jason.
You kind of broke up there through that, so I don't really know what the question was. It was about something about Kyle Busch and Adam Stevens and Paul. I don't know. Their relationship. I don't know. Yeah, I don't follow that stuff. I haven't even heard about it. So.
Yeah, so I was just saying that he, basically had said that he felt.
I knew they didn't like each other at the end. It seemed like I don't know. That's why they're not together. They broke up, got divorced, something, right?
Yep. Brandon, any thoughts on that, or does that not matter to you?
No, I don't know. It's crew chiefs and driver tandems they're not like they were. I think you had Petty and Inman back in the day, and I don't know why the hell Canales and Jimmy decided to leave on their last year. That makes no sense, especially if you're going to retire. And if Chad is rooting for Jimmy as much as he was at Phoenix, I don't know why they retired, or why they not retired, but I don't know why they didn't work together one last year, because it obviously wasn't their communication. They're good for. I don't understand that at all. And
it's silly the way they crew chiefs and shit move around now. It used, like you said, used to have drivers and crew chiefs that would go to different teams together. They were package deals at that time. So
you had Truex and Pern. I mean, back in the day, I mean, you had Zipadelli and Stewart, and that's not necessarily them growing together. That's just because Zipadelli wanted to, kind of retired from being a crew chief. And then like you have Gordon winning with Gustinson and Evernham, and and then working with different crew chiefs. You have Penske swapping crew chiefs for all their drivers last year. So I mean the crew chief and driver dynamic is, I mean, I hate to bring it back to like the Bubba dynamic, but now it's kind of like how football is now, to where if you're a first round quarterback, I mean, you're going to be expected to start and succeed. Here it's, if you're working with a driver and you're a crew chief, I mean, you're expected to succeed or you're going to be moved as well.
And I don't understand, like, these teams, just like they switch crew chiefs around. It's like this, like, we're just going to shake shit up. And it's like, well, a couple of your cars were running good. Like, why are we moving everybody around this year? It's just, yeah. I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't get it either.
And so Brandon, the other part of that I had that I thought was interesting was basically afterwards. So Joe Gibbs basically said what you said, that it's not, the crew chief driver tandem isn't what it used to be. Guys are moving around now. You get to a point where after 4 or 5 years, at a lot of times, you just move on and you switch things up just to, as Jason said, shake them up. But the thing that I thought was interesting is it sounded like Kyle Busch basically had his choice of who his crew chief was going to be. And obviously it's Kyle Busch. Obviously there's a lot more pull in that. Is that a common thing for some of these top-end drivers, or in these teams is it kind of an owner being like, okay, this is who I think you should work with? Or, how does that work?
I think Kyle had his back against the wall. I don't know. I feel like if Kyle would have known that they were going to separate, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but the guy who used to be the crew chief for KBM, like his main crew chief, that was with KBM and Joe Gibbs forever. I forgot who got him. I just went blank on who his name was. I think that's who Kyle really wanted, and I think that's who he really worked on. And he was kind of just, left with this guy. He's kind of worked with him before, but he hasn't had a ton of success. Certainly not last year in the Xfinity Series. Like, I don't think this was Kyle's number one choice. It was just kind of like, okay, well, all I have is you left. Let's go.
All right. Any final thoughts on this week before we get to one and done, Jason?
Just final thought. First look, we kind of went through all that stuff. Be sure to check out my website, freenascardfs.com, later in the week once we get prices and everything, and we can really dial it into what plays we're focusing on for the week. And we'll look at that for Truck Series, Xfinity Series, and Cup Series. That's freenascardfs.com.
And Brandon, from you, any final thoughts before we get to the one and done?
No, I can't think of anything. It'll be really interesting approaching this week, because I think we're going to see people do well that we don't expect. I mean, there's a good chance Keselowski can be really quick. There's a good chance that Bowman can maybe show up. I mean, we saw Hendrick have a lot of speed last year, so I'm really cautious and really hesitant to look at Hamlin and Logano. You can see all my final thoughts. You can really see my final thoughts Sunday morning, 10 a.m. That's when myself and Pierce Dietrich will be live on my YouTube channel. I also have my videos up for the Xfinity and Cup Series on my channel up as well. Another live show Saturday talking about the Xfinity Series with Pierce as well. And then you can find all my projections and all the stuff that I do, or if you want to support me, you can find that at Brandon Cruz DFS on Patreon, and go to racefortheprize.com to use the Fantasy NASCAR stats that I use and that you need to be using as well.
All right, let's finish this up with how we do it. Our version of the one and done. It's our two and done, basically. Brandon, Denny Hamlin last week, 52 points. You are now in first place with 66 points. Jason, Chase Elliott, 31 points. You're in second, 63 points. I took Ryan Bellainey. He had 22 points, and I'm in third with points. So, Jason, you had last choice last week. How do we want to do this? Do we want to do the guy?
I would say you're in.
It's whoever did the worst last week goes first.
But I'm a TV guy. I'm trying to build this up for ratings. I'm trying to get as far behind as I can to come back from behind.
No.
But I'll take it. I'll take it.
You didn't do very well with the first pick last week, so you're doing a good job that way. So
right. First. We're trying to help you, man.
I get there. Don't worry. I'm gonna take a safe pick this week. I'm gonna take Kevin Harvick.
Ooh, I didn't expect you to do that. I thought you were gonna come some crazy off the wall pick.
Everyone's Kevin making Harvick. Fun of me, so I'm in my own little corner, and I'm gonna cry, and I'm gonna take the chalk of the guy who runs well, and I'm gonna take Kevin Harvick.
Oh shit. It's weird because it's like, do you want to waste a guy? Which guy do you want to Do you want to waste this one of the picks this early in the season?
It's like the FanDuel back in the day. Don't save your picks for later on in the season. Just use them. That's how I approach that stuff. I'm not trying to be cute. I'm just playing whoever I have.
Yeah, I like to get cute. Let's go Martin Truex.
Martin.
Okay.
Brandon.
Take Chase Elliott.
Chase Elliott. It is funny though, because if you look at the names, like on the first week, the names are much different than the names that we've taken the past 2 weeks of the Daytona 500 with. Obviously, I took Byron, who's, a top-end driver, but with Bubba and BJ McLeod. And then the past 2 weeks, we've, been smarter with Chase and Denny and Bellainey and Harvick and Truex, the guys that are actually pretty decent drivers. So that's what we're at this week. Jason has Martin Truex. Brandon is taking Chase Elliott. I've got Kevin Harvick. Any long shots before we get out here? Anybody you think that's going to be some high-owned that's got a chance to win this race, or are we, talking about one of these guys at the top end winning at a track like this, Jason?
You mean anybody's going to be high-owned that's going to win this race, or low-owned that's going to win?
Long shot. Anybody.
Yeah. Anybody outside the top, 8 drivers that are normally up there.
I would think Brad Keselowski is a guy who could probably win, who I don't think anybody's going to look into. But if you're looking for a sleeper pick, maybe Alex Bowman could show up and have some good strategy on the end with a good car and win this race.
Are there odds out right now? You're the betting guy, Ryan. Do you have any odds?
So the odds usually come out on the European books earlier. I haven't looked. Let me pull it up real quick. But they're normally not out at least this early. Sometimes with the Cup they are, but definitely for the other series, they're not always.
I think they are out for the Cup, because I've heard people already talking about how much the lines have moved on some drivers in the first day of the lines being up. I guess there's been a lot more movement than typical.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull them up.
I heard that too. I don't look at the lines because I don't bet. But the reason I ask is because I like Briscoe going in this week, and I was just curious on what his odds to win are.
Yeah, so I'm looking now. So it's kind of a clusterfuck at the top. So Denny, Harvick, Chase Elliott, they're all in that 4 to 6 range, 4 to 6 to 1 to range. And that next range is a clusterfuck of Truex, Larson, Joey, Kyle Busch, Bellainey, Brad. They're all in that 7 to 12 to 1. So when you go down a little bit, we're looking. I'm seeing Briscoe at, depending on the book, between 70 and 85 to 1. I think that's.
Oh yeah, I'd throw $10 on that if I could. I don't mind that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of what you were talking about before, is that guys like that, he should have the name recognition, but like Bubba Wallace is 40 to 1 and Chase Briscoe is 70 to 1. That should not be the case.
Yeah, you can't tell me Bubba has a higher chance of winning before Briscoe does. I mean, that's what's broken with the system, man.
And I mean, even these other guys that I'm looking at, they have a more likelihood of Briscoe to win? Maybe, probably, but definitely not with these odds. I mean, you got guys like Bowman and Byron at 20, 25 to 1, Austin Dillon's at 30, 35 to 1. I mean, those you can't convince me. At least the Bowman guys, 20 to 1. I mean, is Alex Bowman really 3.5 more times likely to win this race than Chase Briscoe? There's no way, right?
Yeah, there's no. I mean, Briscoe. Like I said, I'm not into betting and stuff, but I think that is a complete myth. And if usually the betting markets are very similar to pricing on DraftKings, especially on these sites as well. If that's the case, Briscoe might be in the low 8s, maybe high 7s this week. I'm gonna be overowned. I'm gonna have so much Chase Briscoe, it's gonna kill me.
Yeah, and I mean, even when you just look at these odds, it talks about what you guys are talking about with just the names that people are talking about this week. I mean, their odds are much less than what they should be, just in relative to the field. Reddick's at 18 to 1, Kyle Larson in at 10 to 1. I mean, 8 to 1 range. It's like, these guys tend to run well at these kind of tracks, but like Larson, he doesn't have a win here. It's hard to be 7 to 1 at a track you've never won at.
Yeah, right.
That's how I look at it.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else before we get out of here?
I ain't got nothing.
Brandon, you good?
Yeah, I got nothing else. I appreciate everybody tuning in and listening.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I thank everybody for listening this week's episode of Dirty Air. Next week, we are going, where are we next week? Vegas, right? I think we're in Vegas next week. So, yeah, make sure you guys are listening.
We're out of Florida next week? Woo.
I know. And we go across the country. That's how NASCAR does it. You don't go a couple states over. You go across the entire country. So that's what we're going to do.
It's raining this week, right? It's going to rain because it didn't rain. Well, I guess it kind of rained last week at the road course, but it's going to rain.
Mm-hmm.
NASCAR is the only sport that in 2021 should have rainouts. Like, it's the only sport you have to really run outside. Every other sport, it boggles my mind that like we have NFL rainouts or MLB rainouts in 2021. But that's a subject for another day. But NASCAR you can at least live with because you have to run it outside.
Is MLB even a sport? Like,
game, right?
That's like,
well, it's something. It's some sort of game where they have some trash cans and they bang on them and see who can make the loudest noise.
I don't know, man. Basketball and baseball are not sports. They're so boring to watch.
My uncle played baseball till he was 60. Okay, yeah. A 60-year-old can't play a sport.
Yeah.
Tiger Woods is going to come back with, prosthetic legs and still try and play golf. Like, come on, man. What's up?
Well, that's because he's a different species. But yeah. So thank you guys for listening. Make sure wherever you guys are listening to the podcast, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, pretty much anywhere you can listen to podcasts, make sure you like, rate, review, subscribe, whatever you need to do on that platform. Be a friend, tell a friend. I think we do a pretty good job here. If there's
Leave
anything
a penny,
else,
take a penny.
Yeah, I heard that somewhere. I forgot where I heard that. I stole that from somewhere. I forgot where, but I'm sure I'll hear it. But yeah, just, we're always up for suggestions, segments, things we can do, things you like, things you don't like. We're always, trying to get better, trying to help you guys out. That's kind of the idea of this podcast is, giving you guys some information, not necessarily telling you guys what to play or how to do it, but just giving you the information and letting you do what you want with that information. So if there's any other suggestions, let us know. So on behalf of Jason and Brandon, as always, I'm Ryan. Thank you guys for listening. Best of luck this week, and hopefully somebody cashes big. Let's do this.
Peace out.